Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be recreating this beautiful Christmas wreath, and we're going to be using this little guide. The PDF to download this guide is in the video description, so go ahead that way first. You can print it on normal copy paper or transfer paper, whatever works for you or whatever you have. I'm going to go ahead and use transfer paper, but if for some reason you don't have a printer, you can use a bowl to recreate it or a circle maker like this one. It doesn't really matter, just use what you have. And these small circles are where we're going to have the 3 hellebore flowers that will make up the primary part of our wreath. And the hellebore flower is actually called the winter rose, so it's very Christmassy, it's very winter-like, and very applicable to this beautiful wreath. One important thing to keep in mind as we draw this wreath is that wreaths are usually just made up of 2 to 4 different elements that are alternated and then varied. And so for this wreath, we're going to be doing berries, normal leaves, and pine needles. And as we go around the wreath, we're going to alternate them and then add variety. So one branch could have 4 berries, another little branch could have 10 berries. And so that variety will make it look more intricate than it is, and it will make it look so beautiful. We're going to get started with this first flower by drawing part of the center. We're not going to finish the complete center just because part of it is hidden by the petals. So just start by drawing little ovals around that red circle that you see. So we're going to get started with this first petal here that I like to call the guide petal, and that's the one whose shape we can see completely, that it's not obstructed by any other one. And for this flower, it is this first petal right here that's folded over the center. And I apologize for my pen, it is losing a little bit of ink, but I'll go over it twice so you can see it. And the next petal we're going to draw is this one that's directly in front, technically behind this petal, that's still folding over the center. And this will allow us to build the other petals off of it. The next petal that we're going to do is this back one over here that comes off this 2 front petals and connects toward in the center like this. And then following the rest of this guide, we're going to do these 2 side petals. This one on this side does not have a fold, but the one here on the right will have a small fold on the bottom edge. This pen is really struggling, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to the Pentel Feud brush pen, which is my favorite pen to draw with anyway, and you will be able to see it better than this one that's losing ink. The next step is going to be to connect those little ovals to the edge of the petals to complete the center of this flower. Now we're going to get started with this second flower, and this one's going to be a little bit different because of the perspective. We're actually going to be able to see more of the center, and so in this small little circle in the center, draw tiny little ovals close together. And once you finish those tiny little ovals, we're going to do those bigger ovals like we did in the first flower, kind of going into those tiny ovals that you drew. Some will be closer toward the center, some will kind of be coming outward, and so add a little variety, and remember to think about how they will be kind of curving out of that center. If you find yourself a little bit confused about where exactly I'm placing these ovals, just try and follow the guide as much as you can. You can put some slightly outside of this bigger oval, some slightly inside. It'll make a little bit more sense once I start adding those little tendrils that connect it to the center, and I will show you that they're curving from that center, not exactly like a sunray, but a little bit more natural. Drawing this center can seem a little bit time consuming, so just go ahead and take your time, and if you feel a little bit nervous about doing these lines, just make sure that you add a slight curve to them. Don't make them too straight because then it won't look quite as dynamic. It will look more flat. So making sure that even if you're not sure what you're doing, just add a slight curve. Once we finish the center, we're going to be ready to start with the petals, and we're going to start with the guide petals, which will be the top one and this bottom one. And we're going to start with this top one first, just like this, and then followed by this bottom one. And from there you can start building the other petals. And these next two will be slightly shorter just because of the perspective, so keep that in mind and follow the guide sticking close to that line. And with these two petals being shorter, you can kind of tell that this flower is turned a little bit like this, and it's not quite from the top view. And I'm going to go ahead and retrace this top one. I can tell the pen difference and it's kind of bothering me a little bit. I don't know if it bothers you, but it bothers me, so I'm going to go ahead and fix it. And that way you'll also be able to see the crisp lines a little bit more and be able to see the petals, especially if you're needing a little bit more time. Alright, now we're ready to get started with the third and final hellebore flower. And I'm going to turn the paper just because it's a little easier for me to try it this way. And this flower will also be a slight side view, a little bit open, but one slight difference is that one of those petals is kind of folding back towards us as opposed to folding in towards the flower. So we're going to do the center just like we have done the other two, with those nice ovals around the big circle. And then this one also has a tiny little oval in the center that you'll fill with tiny ovals like you did with the second hellebore. I want to go ahead and apologize as well that my hand kind of gets in the way of the filming. Hopefully in the time that my hand spends off and then away drawing other things, you're able to catch up and see what I have been drawing. So here I'm starting to draw those little tendrils connecting the ovals to that center. I'll move my hand eventually, I promise. There it is. And you can kind of tell that I am adding that curve as it comes out from that tiny oval in the center. Go ahead and take your time as you're finishing the oval. It doesn't have to look perfect. The fact that it is pretty detailed will make it look stunning regardless. But we're going to go ahead and get started with the guide petal, which is going to be this first one that I mentioned earlier that folds back towards us. And so that will become more apparent as you add the detail lines and you'll follow that arrow. And we'll also have that second top petal be another guide petal because this one is sitting above the other ones and the other ones are behind it. We're going to get started now with the details, and this is where it's important to follow the arrows that I have drawn in the guide because they are showing you which direction to make the detail lines to better show where they're folding. So like this petal is folded out towards us, so you want those guidelines to reflect that. Same with this one right here. Make sure you take your time as you are adding the detail lines. This is an important part of the flower drawing process because it helps bring your flowers to life. And so you can use the guide to kind of show you which way to build the details, but I will give you just a few tips that I like to give in all of my videos. The first one being to make sure that you add variety in the length of lines, making sure you add some shorter ones, some longer ones, because if they're all the same length, then it's going to look very stagnant. Another tip is to make sure that they're more dense towards the center or areas where it's darker, and more sparse towards the edges of the flowers where it's not as dark or as condensed. And this part will take a little while, so just go ahead and listen to the music and relax as you add the details. You can also skip forward past this part if you wish, or save adding the details until the end. Yay, we're finally on the last petal. So after we finish the details, we're gonna go back and talk a little bit again about the 3 different elements that we're gonna be alternating. We're doing the berries, the leaves, and the pine needles, and we're going to build it around the circle. And like I said in the beginning, we're gonna be alternating as we go around and then adding a little bit variation, whether it be more leaves, more pine needles, less leaves, grouped leaves, whatever it is. And so yours can look exactly like mine, or you can do it your own way, put it wherever you feel looks pretty, most comfortable, just adding that variation, making sure that all the leaves are on one side and all the pine needles are all on one side. I did choose to put a large group of leaves close to the flowers just because leaves usually go with flowers. I will have some leaves on that top part of the wreath as well, but I put a big chunk around the flowers, but not just leaves. I will be adding pine needles and berries here in a minute. A nice way to make your berries look a lot more natural instead of just being a stick with a circle is to add a tiny little, almost like a tiny star shape in the center of it, where it would be the eye of that berry. As you add the 3 different elements and add their variations, make sure that you also change the directions that they're facing, making sure that they're not all, up and down, side to side, but make some go diagonal, some up, some down, so it looks a lot more natural and more circular. You can turn the paper around like I did, just so it makes it easier as you're drawing and as you're building these 3 elements and that variety. This part will take even longer than the details did, just because you are drawing so many different elements, but just have fun with this. Like I said, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, and it doesn't have to look perfect. Once you see the finished product, you're going to just be amazed how beautiful it looks. It is going to look professional, despite it being just a simple 3 flowers and then 3 different elements that you changed up. And you're just going to be so amazed at what your hands have created. Now that we have finished drawing these elements in this main portion where the flowers are, we're ready to start drawing these elements around the top part of that wreath, following that line on the top. And don't let this part make you nervous. You're going to do just like you have done now, building off of each other, but now you're going to have it building along the circle. And as you start drawing around the circle, this is where it becomes really important to alternate. You don't want to have just leaves or just berries or a large chunk of berries all together. You want it to be alternating and also look balanced, making sure that you have berries in all the right places and the pine needles, so that it's not all the pine needles are on one side, all the berries on the other side. I also like to alternate the directions that these are going. So from the top part, they're going towards the left, and then from this bottom part, they're going to start going toward the right, and they're going to meet in the center. And I like to add pine needles there in the center when they meet, just because those are the most easy to overlap and balance. I love to see the wreath coming together, and it looks so splendid, and I'm so excited to see what you guys are creating. If you feel comfortable, I would love if you guys shared it with me. My Instagram is @KarenB.creations, and you guys can always send me a private message, or you can post it and tag me in it so that I can see it. I would love to see what you've created and be able to, number one, validate your work, and also just see what you're learning. It'd be so cool. Well, you guys, we have reached the end. We have finished our wreath. It should look something like this. It will be slightly different depending on where you put your leaves and the other different elements. But when you're finished, it should look something like this. And this is a perfect for writing a little message in this. And you can write, I love you, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you want. And what's really nice about this wreath is that you can add alterations to it. So you can do one leaf, you can do all 3 leaves, you can take them out completely and just alternate the different elements that you did. But you can make it your own, and that's what makes it so easy to do. Thank you so much for watching.